Welcome to Behavior Masterclass number 8. This is Gaurav Kapoor class today. Thank you for joining. There might be some new members joining today. Very quickly, what is behavior? It's a series of master classes designed for pharmaceutical marketers and market researchers to teach them how to apply behavioral science in their day-to-day marketing activities. This is 30 minutes only. You really don't need any background or knowledge or information about behavioral science. Our goal in 30 minutes is to teach you a principle or two actually in behavioral science that you should be able to apply almost immediately after the class is over. So we approach these classes with a very high standard from an actionability standpoint, and therefore this class doesn't have any Q&A in. To just kind of walk you through the lesson, and the lesson is designed in a way so that you can apply it quickly. Every class is structured similarly. If you're joining for the first time, we will be reviewing or learning about two different heuristics. Heuristics, mental shortcuts that drive human decision making. Behavioral science is a study of biases that drive human decision making. So we will be taking two specific heuristics and demonstrating how these heuristics can influence decision making in life in general, in certain categories, product categories or industries outside the pharmaceutical industry, but then very quickly focus most of the examples in pharmaceutical industry. And the entire class is taught using examples, and these are examples that you will not find anywhere in a book or an article or a publication of any kind. These are highly curated examples that we are bringing forward, and they help drive the learning or expedite or accelerate the learning. So let's dive right in. The first heuristic we're going to cover today is called instant return. First, let's just learn what it is and how it understanding how it drives decision making. What is instant return is the tendency for people to value immediate rewards. There are times in life when you kind of jump for something, you can get an immediate reward. It sounds really promising, sounds very interesting. You're attracted. If you were to sit back and just take a few minutes to think rationally about, do you reward that quickly or that immediately, and are you paying a premium for it? Are you going out of your way to get it? Is it really worth it or not? We don't do any of that math in our head, and we are just wired to want to immediate rewards just sound very valuable. We often fall for them. For any of you who are familiar with heuristics and biases, you might be familiar with another heuristic instant return may resemble. It's called hyperbolic discounting. The word sounds very fancy, but the idea is very simple. We are wired to discount the value of long-term rewards. We don't trust them. We've never seen them come through in life, and people promise, you know, this will happen, that'll happen, and it doesn't. Most of the time it doesn't. So we tend to discount the value of long-term benefits and rewards, and instead we would rather choose a small reward if we can get it now, rather than wait for a much bigger reward for which we should have waited. It was rationally the better decision, but we don't do that. It's important as you learn more about heuristics and biases to understand differences between them so that you can apply them correctly. You can use them the way they are meant to be. And these two are close cousins, these heuristics, but they are different, and there are nuances, differences, which will be exemplified as we go through the examples in a second. So let's look at our first example. Everybody's familiar with this category of pregnancy tests, and it's a large kind of at-home diagnostics product category. There's a few leading brands like First Response or EPT, etc. And these are just screenshots from First Response website. And you can notice in the messaging that they're featuring on their landing page, there are two messages that are directly touching on instant return heuristic. For those of you who've attended our class before, you would have heard us use the term or fight the heuristics that your customers are using to make decisions in your product category. You can do that through messaging or through other marketing activities. And by feeding or fighting the right heuristics, you can grab the customer's attention and make them pay more attention to your messaging, to your product, to your packaging, whatever you're working on. So this is a good example of instant return feeding instant return heuristic in the messaging for this product. It's being done in two places. The only brand that can tell you 6 days sooner than your missed period, and also read your results in just 3 minutes. So again, and this is all subjective, so different people can have different opinions, but for most people, 6 days sooner, is that really a meaningful benefit or difference given a pregnancy will last 9 months? 3 minutes, getting results in 3 minutes when you have waited for 3 months or whatever it is that a meaningful difference? And you could argue not so much, but they just grab your attention. You prioritize or features or benefits more than another one that doesn't have the same one, and now you're more likely to buy it. Let's look at another example. We're going to look at lots of examples because this science is best understood by examples. Everybody knows this brand, Tums. What people may not know about this brand is how brilliantly marketed this brand has been over the last 30-some years or even longer, and how it has actually survived significant market events and yet not given up much in terms of revenue or share. This category has seen the RX to OTC switches of two major classes of drugs. H2 blockers switched in the 1990s, proton pump inhibitor switch in 2000s, and despite both of those switches, if Tums had followed the same kind of path that Benadryl or some of the other brands in allergy category had when new switches came on, it would be not dead, it would be a much smaller business today. But Tums has not only survived, they've actually held ground against these RX to OTC switches. And it's even more respectable what they've been able to do, given the fact that the proton pump inhibitors like Nexium and Prilosec they were allowed by the FDA to use a claim called zero, like literally they can say zero heart rate, which is an amazing claim. A lot of the success of Tums resides on feeding instant return heuristic. And I have a request for everybody who's participating. If you could mute your phones, or if you're listening to the computer, if you could mute your speaker. I think some people are hearing some echo. You can see on the package, it even says goes to work in seconds. Now, obviously, a heart sufferer wants relief now. So, we're not denying that you don't need relief, but the whole idea of goes to work in seconds, it's actually the way they're able to make that claim is, and when you conduct research, focus groups, etc., with patients, and they talk about Tums, almost all the time they're talking about as soon as they take it, it's like the soothing or the pleasant taste or the soothing sensation. It's all coming from the food flavors and that kind of tactile experience before the actual active ingredient kicks in and starts giving you acid neutralization. So it's very smart, very brilliant kind of product marketing that has allowed them to come up with a claim that nobody can challenge, goes to work in seconds, and continue to kind of defend the brand against very significant competitors. Let's look at some more examples. Many of you might be in an area where your primary movie theater go-to location is an AMC. Others might do the same thing, but AMC theaters will not let you redeem coupons or discount vouchers if you're reserving your seats online. Yet, lots of people will actually go book their tickets online, and they might even have coupons or vouchers that they're not able to use. Now, again, rationally, you can say, what is the benefit of seeing the movie as soon as it comes out or sooner rather than later? If, sometimes it could just be a matter of a few hours. You can go to the theater and you can actually get the ticket half price off. But it's instant return heuristic that's basically coming into play. Now you can say you can be a trendsetter and you want to be able to talk about the movie, you want to be the first one to comment on, etc. And that may be the case, but for most people, that benefit, it may not be a significant benefit. Here's another example. We want to play a commercial for you. It's a recent one that you might have already seen on air, or if not, here it is.
The new Hertz Fast Lane is so quick, our members can be out of the airport in the blink of an eye. Hertz, we're here to get you there.
They are also using instant return heuristic. Nobody is arguing against the fact that people want to get in and out of their rental car, in their rental car, and get going on their way sooner or quickly. But think again, rationally, if Hertz had, let's say Hertz had two choices. They can add more buses to their fleet of pickup buses, from the airport to the Hertz rental center, in order to get people in and out quickly. Or they can add this kind of a clear technology-based device that can allow people to whiz through the exit lane quickly. Which one meaningfully offers you a bigger benefit as a consumer? Which one actually gets you into your car quickly in terms of net savings of minutes? One could argue having more buses might be a lot more helpful, because you wait for a lot longer to just get into the bus, the pickup bus, than you do to actually get out of the rental car, Hertz rental car center. But that wouldn't be very exciting from a marketing standpoint, and it would probably cost them more money to do. So this is a small investment that they can make and really leverage it as a brand differentiator, and all of it is based on or feeding instant return heuristic. So lots of examples, some from pharmaceutical industry, some from consumer goods, to help you understand what this heuristic is and how you may be able to use it.
The
next heuristic we're going to focus on, pardon the pun, is focusing effect. So let me introduce what that heuristic is first. So focusing effect, you might have, some of you, if you've read anything about this, you might actually be familiar with an experiment that was done a long time ago by psychologists, where they asked people to watch a video, and they asked people to count the number of times. It was a basketball, a video in a game. Count the number of times a white player passed the ball to a white player, or a white player passed the ball to a black player. And that was the task given to people. And in this task, they, just to basically see how people would ignore some other events that are, they inserted literally a picture of a gorilla in the middle of the video. It's smack in the middle of the video, and nobody saw it because they were so focused or busy on counting the number of times passes were being made from one to another. That led to the discovery or to the naming of this effect called focusing effect, which basically means we can sometimes place too much importance on something small. We're so hyper-focused on it that it enlarges or amplifies in our mind and takes up a lot more mind space than it really should. And we kind of sort of don't look at the bigger or the larger picture and all the other things that we should also be focusing on. We are focusing on this minutia, if you will, or something small that has, for whatever reason, we've become obsessed with it, or we're just paying too much attention to it. Some of you might have experienced focusing effect if you are one of those people who have a favorite coffee mug, or you've had disasters in your car where you're, like you've spilled coffee because the cup holder is not good or whatever. There are, some people who literally will decide which car they're going to buy. At the end of the day, if they're comparing two models, it may come down to which one has the better cup holders. And now it sounds crazy that you would spend $40-some thousand, whatever, 20 to plus $1,000, and the decision is being made on the cup holder, that does not make sense. But, and it doesn't happen all the time, but there are times and there are people who are doing that. So let's look at some examples of focusing effect in life, in some consumer or other industries, and then we'll look at pharmaceutical industry as well. This is a very relevant example of focusing effect. What did Colin Kaepernick protest against in the first place? And look where the conversation has shifted to now. And is there even any focus left on the original issue, at least from an NFL involvement standpoint? Does it even matter anymore? And that poor guy is out of a job and has been for the last 3 years, and now waiting for a settlement with the NFL to, maybe they'll compensate him for, what happened to him. But it is interesting in that focusing effect shifted as a result of, it kind of shifted the conversation to something totally not irrelevant, but away from the original issue, which many people would argue is a legitimate issue. And deserved attention, whether it was this kind of attention or not, that's everyone has their own opinion, but it deserved attention, and now it's kind of, it's dissolved. Let's look at another example. Focusing effect in the fitness tracking market. Very interesting dynamic. Any of you enthusiasts who are using Fitbits or any of those fitness trackers and the apps associated with them, there are many people use them, the way they're meant to be, but then there are many people who are obsessively focused on getting my 10,000 steps in. Today I'm still at 8,500. I need to get 1,500 more steps or whatever it is. And again, nobody's saying steps are not good or they're bad, but in the grand scheme of things, given if your goal is to be healthy, both physically and mentally or whatever, the number of steps in a day is probably a small component of that overall health and all the efforts that you need to do to actually achieve that health. But it becomes a proxy for almost not just your kind of mobility and movement and some caloric, burning. It actually becomes a proxy for any and all health, and people become obsessively focused on just that. Just achieving that goal becomes my, be all and end all in my attempts to be healthy. So also focusing effect, and it helps the companies who make these kinds of devices and associated apps. Let's look at another example. Continuing the theme around fitness and exercise and those kinds of things. Sometimes, we may all have fallen a victim to these kinds of situations, but for those who are constantly watching, trying to get more protein in their food intake and doing it in a more bioavailable manner. Sometimes you are so focused on that you actually don't realize, you don't see the bigger picture. So this one protein shake has 410 calories. It has 450 milligrams of sodium, which I make smoothies at home. So do many of you. I don't know who puts salt in their smoothie. I've never done that. Where would it even come from? And 47 grams of sugar, never mind that. So it's another example. Now, many savvy consumers will actually look at the whole label and they'll evaluate and do a trade-off between, do I really want 47 grams of sugar, even if I do want the 32 grams of protein or not. So, but many other people may not, because they're just focusing effect is actually driving their purchase decision-making in this category. Let's look at another example. So for any of you who might have worked in the anticoagulation category, whether it's deep vein thrombosis, DVT, or pulmonary embolism, or SPAF, etc., all of those related categories, focusing effect was an important heuristic, still is, but less so with the introduction of the NOACs, the factor 10 agents, which have kind of shifted the category away from Coumadin to brands like Eliquis and Xarelto. But for 30-some years, Coumadin was the primary treatment, standard of care treatment for anticoagulation. And interestingly, the way physicians actually managed Coumadin a lot of disproportionate focus went on INR, PT-INR testing, and preventing a bleed became more important, was more important for a lot of physicians than preventing a stroke, which is what the original need was in the first place. So focusing effect essentially, just like Colin Kaepernick discussion we had about the original issue and the original conversation, and how as a result of focusing effect, it shifted, and became like something totally like different and perhaps not even as important. Same thing here in INR testing for Coumadin patients. It's like just over time, slowly, the conversation can shift. If you go back like 10, 20 years in time, many cardiologists or even PCPs who basically sensed opportunity in this area, they built Coumadin clinics where they had staff who was like entirely focused on bringing patients, especially elderly patients who were on Coumadin, into the clinic every week to test their INR levels. And this test is a point of care test, so it's very easy, but it was a significant source of revenue for these physicians, that these clinics, and nobody's saying again that the test is not important, but we're highlighting the impact of focusing effect heuristic and how it kind of sort of, one could argue, made or drove some suboptimal decision making in this category or in this disease state. If you have lived in this category, you might even remember that in the mid-2000s, the FDA had actually was championing introduction of a diagnostic test that could fairly accurately predict effectiveness of Coumadin on each patient individually, so that the physician could then decide whether they wanted to put them on Coumadin at all or not, whether this drug would be very effective for them or not. And the AMA and cardiologists, associations, etc., fought that proposal tooth and nail, and they made all sorts of excuses for why they didn't believe that diagnostic test was not the right thing to do, etc. The real reason was they didn't want to give up the revenue stream that they had that coming from these Coumadin clinics. So interesting example of focusing effect, and in a fairly large category. All right, one more example, and then we'll do a quick recap. Last example on focusing effect is an ad that we want to also, it's an ad that is currently on air, and we want to play for you, and then just we'll kind of describe how focusing effect is coming into play here as well.
Jardian's asked, when it comes to managing your type 2 diabetes, what matters to you? For most of you, it's lower A1C, but only a few of you are thinking about your heart. Fact is, even though it helps to manage A1C, type 2 diabetes still increases your risk of a fatal heart attack or stroke.
So the Jardians was the first SGLT2 which got a like an indication for CV reduction as well, reducing the risk of CV events and mortality. And it's interesting, so they've been aggressively marketing it, and now since then others have also gotten that, like Infocana. But in the ad, the copy, if you listen to the copy, it says, even though reducing A1C can help, but the risk of cardiovascular is increases with diabetes. So it's very interesting that they're basically trying to shift the conversation to it's like, that diabetes is, I mean, one could argue, and as patients voted, the number one thing was A1C, and it still should be. But in their case, because now they do have a new indication for it as well, but it's being marketed in the same brand and mostly targeting similar patient types, they're trying to message to use focusing effect and shift the focus and almost make cardiovascular risk and of events, etc., even more important than A1C. Obviously, walking on a very, very thin line or fine line with the FDA in terms of how to do it or what you can or cannot say, but you can detect the presence of this heuristic in this commercial. So so today we learned. Let's do a recap of what we learned, and then we'll give you some pointers on how to look for, given whatever brand or asset, early stage asset that you might be working in, whatever disease state that you're involved in, how to look for the presence of either one of these heuristics if it's at play, i.e. it is driving decision making for any one of your customer stakeholders, be it physicians or patients or payers. And if it is, then what to do about it, or how to leverage it in your marketing efforts. So we covered instant and focusing effect. Instant return means we seek or value immediate returns or immediate rewards, even though there may not be rationally, there may not be as much benefit to the immediacy, if you will. And we can sometimes focus too much on one thing and something small, and we can not pay enough attention to the broader picture, if you will. So just to give you some guidelines on how you might be able to look for the presence of these heuristics in your disease state or in your product category that you're working. And we've broken this out by physician and patient, depending on what you're working on. Obviously, for instant return, what you're looking for is disease states where immediate stabilization is priority. It could be mood, psychiatric conditions when the patient is really kind of manic or depressive state. It could be, we give you examples of diagnostics where getting the results, the perception is that the result, like immediately getting results, whether it's of a diagnostic test or it's of an actual treatment or a procedure, etc., seems to be very important, or you can make it very important, even though rationally there isn't a need for that kind of hyper immediacy or hyper urgency. You have made it valuable, and now you as a brand own it if nobody else has the same thing. And any diseases where delaying treatment could have serious consequences. Again, you could, and you're trying to create urgency of treatment through your messaging. Maybe it's an underdeveloped market where for whatever reason, physicians have a start low and go slow type of approach. You want to feed instant return. A patient one, it's almost a little easier. Wherever you have a disease state where it's highly symptomatic, instant relief, whether it's pain or allergies or respiratory conditions or different migraine, etc. So you can think about many more of those. And again, everybody knows fast relief is an important benefit platform in all of these kinds of disease states. That's already common knowledge. That's not new news. How you can feed instant return and basically create product features or identify ways to articulate your benefit platform that becomes differentiated and brand ownable for you and not for others. And for focusing effect, again, basically any disease states where specific drug characteristics can or need to be highlighted, or a specific experience in the treatment process can be highlighted. Those are opportunities, or some step in the process or diagnostic or treatment process is where people are hyper focused on that step. It may be good for your brand, i.e. you can bypass that step and now you have something really unique to say. It could be bad for your brand because it becomes a pain point or a barrier to trial or adoption for your brand. So depending on which side of the fence you are, you will basically kind of have to either feed or fight it. On the patient side, any diseases where treatment is like popular among a large number of patients, so many patients are trying this or that, and they're kind of focused, even though it may not be the right thing, is they're hyper focused on a certain treatment option. You might actually be, again, feeding or fighting focusing effect there. So so this is kind of where we will stop for this masterclass. Just to recap again, Today we reviewed or learned about two heuristics. One has to do with how people value benefits and rewards if, in the context of immediacy. And the other one is how people can irrationally focus on something that theoretically shouldn't be so important, given if they were thinking big or if they were thinking broad, but it either on its own has become important, or you can make it important for them and get their attention. So we'll close this masterclass with that note, and thanks for joining. Our next masterclass is about in a month. We'll be hosting masterclass series every month, 30 minutes, 2 heuristics, lots of examples to teach you how to use it on an everyday basis. Thank you again for